Good morning, I'm WaywornWyrm, and welcome to this Friday show. As you can tell by the image, we're going to be talking about the election today, and by election I do mean the American midterm election, which happened on November 6th, which was this past Tuesday. Must really not want to get broad group because I talked about sexism and misogyny 2 weeks ago in the last Friday show, and this Friday I'm talking about the election, and I'm going to be very one-sided about this. But there are some things that I feel that we need to talk about, so let's jump right in. The first thing is, I'm hearing a lot of people talk about how the Senate races turned out less than ideally. And that's true. The Republicans picked up 3 seats. That's not what I wanted, but it's what I knew was likely to happen. And the reason that is because every 2 years, 1/3 of the Senate goes up for re-election. They get 6-year terms, and they're spaced out, so every other year, 1/3 of the Senate has to go up for re-election. And in this current cycle, I think it was something like 26 of the 34 seats were Democrat. So the Republicans had a lot of places that they could switch, while the Democrats did not. But what a lot of people are saying is unfair is that if you take the number of people who voted for Democrats for senator, like all over the nation, every single Senate race, if you count up all of the Democrats, or all the people who voted for Democratic candidates, and then you subtract the number of people in all of the Senate races who voted for Republican candidates, you end up with 9 million people. 9 million people more voted for Democratic senators across the nation than who voted for Republican senators. And yet, Republicans walk out with a net change of +3, and Democrats walk out with a net change of -3. Because I think of the 2 independents that are in the Senate, I think Bernie Sanders was the only one up for re-election, which I do believe he won. So that sucks. But there are a lot of people who are saying that that's unfair and it's because of gerrymandering. Sure, if states are gerrymandering. In case you don't know how the Senate works in the United States government, the Senate is one of our 2 legislative houses. From every single state, there are 2 senators. 2 senators from all 50 states. Whereas the House of Representatives, that has each state has 1 representative per every so many people. Here, let me look that up. It is roughly 700,000 and counting. Apparently, it is legally set at 435 people for the entire nation. Or, yeah, 435 representatives for the entire nation, split proportionally by state. But we're not going to talk about the House right now. We might later in this video. Probably not, but maybe. What we're going to focus on is the Senate. And the thing is, in the Senate races that Democrats won, they won by a wider margin than states where Republicans won. And that is the long and short of it. That's why there's so many more Democrats, or people who voted for Democrats, not necessarily Democrats, yet the Republicans still won. Like if you take Texas, for example, in the race between Ted Cruz and Beto O'Rourke, Ted Cruz won by 23,089 votes. So by winning by just over 223,000 votes, Ted Cruz won by about 3%. It's like 2.6% of the vote is what he won by. And again, 223,000. Let's look at a different Senate race where... You know what? Let's look at the Florida Senate race, which was also won by a Republican last night. So in Florida, Rick Scott's a Republican, beat the Democrat incumbent Bill Nelson by 30,264 votes. So, very thin. Let's look at Michigan, where Debbie Stabenow, the incumbent Republican, beat John James by more than those two combined. She won it by 249,000 plus votes. Just in that one race. In Wisconsin, the Tammy Baldwin, the Democrat incumbent, beat Leah Volkmer by, again, just under 300,000 votes. In Wyoming, John Barrasso, who is an incumbent, beat Gary Trauner, a Democrat, by 75,000 votes. In Washington, Maria Cantwell, an incumbent Democrat, beat Susan Hutchinson, a Republican, by 300,000 votes. In California, where over 6 million votes were cast, all 6 million of those were for Democrats. There was not a Republican running because of how California works. So of the 9 million more Democrats that voted for of the 9 million people who voted for Democratic candidates over Republican candidates, about 6 million of them were in California, both voting for Democrats. It's 3.4 million to just shy of 2.9 million. In Hawaii, the Democrat incumbent beat the Republican by 150,000 votes. About 155,000. Out of just under 400,000 votes cast. In Mississippi, out of 800,000 votes cast, about 850,000 votes cast, the Republican candidate beat the Democratic candidate by less than 200,000 votes. Tennessee, Marsha Blackburn, Republican, beat Phil Bredstein by less than 300,000 votes. In Ohio, the Democratic incumbent beat the Republican by just shy of 300,000 votes. So what I'm getting at, and I hope you're seeing this by now, is where Democrats won, they won by a large margin. In Pennsylvania, that margin was over 600,000 votes. In Montana, it was 10,000 out of less than 450,000 people voting. Actually, looking at it, if everyone who voted for the Libertarian candidate had voted for the Republican candidate, John Tester wouldn't be a senator anymore. But yeah, where the Democrats won, they tended to win by about 300,000 votes, if not more. And then you've got California, where all of the votes from California went to Democrats and 0 votes went to Republicans. There was not a Republican in that election to vote for. Whereas most Republicans who won by less than 200,000 votes. That's not gerrymandering. That's just the fact that in statewide races, Democrats won by wider margins. And yes, that sucks, especially because that happened with the presidential election 2 years ago. But because Hillary Clinton won some states with wide margins, where Trump won most of his states with narrow margins, Trump gets the presidency despite 3 million more people voting for Hillary Clinton. And that's a tough pill to swallow, and it's going to be a tough pill to swallow for a long time, because that seems unfair. I would argue it is unfair, but it at least seems unfair. I think we can all get on board that train. So that's what's going on. Where Democrats win, they're winning by large margins, and where Republicans are winning, they're winning by narrow margins. And because of that, you're going to have more people overall in the nation voting for Democrats than you are for Republicans. And when you factor in the belief that essentially every single person on the left in American politics believes that the Republican Party is actively destroying our country, you're going to get some people who are really pissed off that more people can vote for Democrats, yet still have Republicans making gains. Although, what I will put out, what I'm going to say right now, again, I'm recording this video on Wednesday afternoon. The Florida election that we talked about with Rick Scott, there is still 1% of the vote that hasn't been counted. So, it is not fully certain that Rick Scott won. He probably won. However, where that 1% is located is mostly Democrats. The people who vote in that area mostly vote for Democrats. And then there's a similar situation going on in Arizona, where there's 99% reporting. However, if most to all of that 1% that has yet to be counted in officially is counted in as Democrat, then it could become a Democrat seat. So there are things that will happen, that can happen. Probably won't, but can. And if those two elections go to Democrats, that will mean that the Republicans only pick up one seat. They will have 51 to the Democrats' 47, with two people who are independent. However, both of those people tend to vote with the Democrat caucus, which means when counting voting blocks, they are Democrat. So, but yeah, that's something that I'm hearing a lot about, and I wanted to talk about it. Just why so many more people can vote for a Democrat, and yet Republican victories can happen. It's because the Democrat vote is not equally spread in every state. The states where it's strong, it's very strong. And the states where it's weak, but how weak it is getting smaller every election. On paper, a Republican candidate in Texas should have beat the ever-living shit out of their Republican or their Democrat opponent. Beto O'Rourke should not have gotten so close to beating Ted Cruz. He should have lost by a lot. It should have been really obvious really early on that there's no way that Beto could win. In fact, ABC News last night voted, or they called Texas for Cruz when just under 2% of the vote was counted. Now, granted, they were right. However, there were moments where Beto O'Rourke was winning, and he ended up losing by a small amount. So that's just something to think about. And we've got the 2020 elections to worry about. And not only that, 2020 is going to be a presidential election. If those gains that we've been seeing continue, and if more states change the way that their electoral college votes go to the person who won the overall national popular vote, which several states have, I think we could have a really interesting 2020. Not all of my hope in humanity died last night. Now, all of that aside, make sure you tune in tomorrow for another Sherlock Holmes episode. We are continuing our way through a study in Scarlet. And tune in tomorrow night over on my Twitch channel, where my wife and several friends play The Curse of Strahd. And the link to my Twitch is in the description down below. Thank you.